Hi there. All right, this is the AI from the Trenches panel. I am Matt Casey, data science content lead here at Snorkel. I was a journalist for a while, then data scientist, and now they've put me on this stage with these very talented people to talk about what can go wrong and right with enterprise AI projects. You might notice that we were supposed to have a fourth member here. He is on a customer call. That is the dedication that we show to our customers here. Can each of you introduce yourself in terms of your professional experience and why you love AI? Alex, let's start with you.
Yeah. Hey y'all, I'm Alex, machine learning engineer here at Snorkel. Before Snorkel, I worked at a medical device company as a computer vision researcher, and really joined Snorkel because I found, like, in my experience, trying out like various model architectures, or just trying to solve really hard problems, that like oftentimes data really was the blocker, and I found many examples where curating to like a better data set, it's like where we spent most of our times, had the most creative approaches and found the most, delta and uplift in accuracy.
Yep, hi, I'm Andre. I've been in AI for about 11 years now. I head up our machine learning field engineering team in EMEA, so I'm based in London in the UK. Before joining Snorkel a few months ago, actually, I spent 8 years at another AI platform vendor like Data Robots, where I joined in the very early days of this company, like where there were only like 70 employees, and brought the company to like more than 1,000 employees globally. I was leading the international markets for technical sales teams, so pre-sales, professional services, and delivery. Before that, I was working in finance and in media. I've been in AI for 10 years now, and very excited to have joined Snorkel recently. In terms of why I love AI, I'd say it's the breadth of applications. When I was working in finance, I was finding like it was a bit too specialized, too specific, and AI is really like you have common technical tools and methodologies that you can use in any industry, right? Any industry, and so the range of possibilities to innovate with the technology is really exciting, and that's why I love AI.
Hey everybody, my name is Elena, and I'm the head of applied machine learning team here at Snorkel. And we're a customer-facing team, and we're responsible for delivering customer projects, so making our customers successful with their use cases. So I'm here today to talk about how to make your use cases successful, and that's been my experience in data science throughout my career. So originally, I'm a math and statistics person. I've always been a statistician. Before it was called data science, then it got rebranded as data science. And then my PhD is in public health with applications of machine learning. So that's why I really fell in love with AI, is applying machine learning techniques to a variety of data sets was so exciting, because in the public health space, like I applied it to accelerometer data to predict cardiovascular health outcomes. And that was exciting because you're out of the signals and the noises of all of the, here comes Gabe.
Hi, Gabe.
Out of all those signals in the accelerometer data, you're able to pick up the signal that is relevant to you to identify cardiovascular health risk. And that's so exciting because you can pick and choose what you want out of your data, right? This is what we're all here about to do. And then from my PhD, I went to FINRA, which is down the street at One Liberty Plaza here. And then I had, this is my fourth startup after FINRA. So Databricks, H2O.ai, and then Tempest.ai, which is a genomics precision medicine company that sequences the human genome for cancer and oncology applications. And then I joined Snorkel because as a longtime data scientist, I was familiar with their work and actually used some of their concepts in the past. So excited to be here and talking with you.
Gabe, thanks for joining us.
Yes, and sorry I'm late, everyone. I'm on the success team, and I needed to be late to help a customer be successful, and so that was what was needed.
Good job echoing the talking point we set up. Could you please introduce yourself and tell us why you love AI?
Yes, happy to. So I'm Gabe Smith. I'm what we call a senior machine learning success manager, and so really, but this role is unique in that we're really technical CSMs. So we're really tied to helping our customers be successful, and so I currently work with 8 of some of our biggest customers to ensure that they are, one, successful with our product, Snorkel Flow, but also ensure that they are getting value, getting models into production, really helping drive business metrics and really drive successful projects across the enterprises that we're working with. By my background, I'm actually a trained data scientist. I studied math in my undergrad and computer science in grad school. Ironically, back in the early, around COVID, I was actually doing research on the GPT-2 models before they really exploded after GPT-3 came out. And so, and to answer your question, why I love AI, when I was coming out of high school, I loved math and I loved business. And I felt like there had to be a way you can morph both of these. And so AI is a really unique place in that using these mathematical models or transformer architectures, which really are the foundation of these GPT and these powerful LLMs we're working with, I wanted to find ways we can really drive business value using AI. And it's the research I think that we're seeing with AI is truly amazing right now. A lot of these new models, I don't know if anyone's played with the new Gemini models, the Llama models, they're so powerful, but what's interesting is how we can actually make these valuable and get business value out of them is really the key thing I'd say that everyone here at Snorkel is and why Snorkel really exists.
So a theme that I heard out of all of this is the flexibility of AI and also success. Success can be tricky when you're talking about an AI application. So when you're working with a customer on an AI project and delivering it, how are you defining success? How do you go about choosing how to define success? And then how do you measure it? Let's start with Elena.
Sure, and actually, Gabe is our success manager, so you definitely want to hear his answer. But my team specifically, we're responsible for delivering customer projects, right? And so to me, success ultimately, bottom line, is to find that we're able to get your model into production and you're able to derive value from it. And so that's like in the back of my mind. We may have other success metrics, but my goal is for you to always have a deployed model. And it's hard because actually, once you deploy a model, it's not done, right? Like I talked to many of you today, like how do you monitor the model? How do you have a feedback loop? So there are many pieces to that, but ultimately, can we build such a model that's good enough for you to get value out of it, but also can we put it in production for you to actually live with and use? So that's my quick answer. I want to get everybody else's perspective, but I just kind of always use that as the metric.
It's a good start.
Yeah.
Gabe, you were name checked. Why don't you pick it up?
Sure, I'm happy to talk just about our customer work. And look, I think what's most important when you are starting a project, when you're working on projects, is really from the get-go having those defined success metrics. And for anyone that's worked with the Snorkel team, you'll know that we actually spend a lot of time really focused on that scoping. We want to make sure, one, what is the exact task? What are really the key business metrics that you guys have that we can make sure we are tied to and ensuring that you guys are hitting as part of this process? And then the third piece is, ensuring best AI and ML practices while we're building models in our platform, and then really ensuring that the data as well is helping us get to the results that we need to help really push things into production. And just like our Elena had mentioned, it really comes down to ensuring that these business results are actively being used. When I first joined Snorkel, I remember there was a report done where I read about 85% of AI and ML projects never end up going into production. And really where we focus on Snorkel is, although you may find it painful at times, we focus on that scoping piece so that we ensure the models we're working with are going into production for what we need.
Yeah, a lot of POCs don't go anywhere.
If I may, actually, AI and ML is not an experiment, right? Like a lot of people experiment with AI and machine learning. Actually, AI and machine learning solutions are products. What you do when you build a product, the first thing is you define the scope, the requirements. You go and talk to the users of the product and you interact with them on what they're looking for. And that's the same for an AI and machine learning project. Who are the users in that case? Very often it's the business stakeholders. So you kind of go and sit with them, you land on the objectives, you understand what they want to achieve. There's an overarching vision about the product. Then there are some potential requirements or things they will do with it, outcomes they expect, whether it's ROI or other outcomes. And that's what you have to do, all this work up front before you actually even engage. And sometimes you have to reset the expectation as well. And that's where it's so important to put so much effort in scoping for success. Yeah.
So I want to move on to the next question here, and I want to stick with you. We were talking yesterday about different problems that you've run into.
Yeah.
And I'd like to talk about the technical sticking points that you see enterprises running into over and over again. So what are the common, on this stage there are dozens of projects represented. What have you been seeing over and over again?
Yeah. what I've been seeing over and over again, I mean, and you'll know because I work at Snorkel, so it's part of our story, but it's actual, like true from 10 years of experience in AI, is the lack of high quality data is a problem that's over and over again coming through, and it's really important. I'd say like enterprise and companies, they have like ecosystems with highly noisy, for sometimes incomplete data sets, and so you need to actually be able to operate in this environment. So sometimes like just increasing the complexity of your models or your systems, if you don't have like the let's say the groundwork done on data quality, will not work, right? And so one way to remediate that is actually to put like data development, improving data quality as part of the process, right? And I don't mean running that in silo. I mean like in silo from actually creating models is integrating this as a core part of your AI development. It's making sure that high quality data, you can iterate over it, and then often you have to bring the business because they will give feedback on the data and they will how to develop it as well. And that's why like a lot of projects fail, is or a lot of projects get delayed. This lack of high quality data or not enough emphasis into it. Yeah.
Alex, you want to pick it up?
Yeah, sure. I think one thing that we preach is like a lot of like subject matter expertise. The power of subject matter expertise and having like really tight connection, of building nice subject matter expert data scientists like tandem workflows, right? So like that's really big powerful part of Snorkel is just like actually having this like platform where we have workflows built in for both subject matter experts and data scientists, and especially working like now in a customer-facing role, seeing all sorts of different teams. Like we all have so many little acronyms and just like company-specific like terms that we throw around, like they make sense to everyone. But like it really comes, you can think of all these sorts of like acronyms that you see in your real data, right? Like that like there's no way that like GPT-4 or whatever would recognize, right? Like what do these three letters mean, right? So having that sort of like tandem like SME in the loop, like I've seen that being super powerful, and it's like something that we really build for because it's something we see tripping up a lot of machine learning projects otherwise.
So obviously agree with all of what you've said, and I've kind of in my experience, I was a data scientist, and then I went to companies that offer solutions for data scientists, and so that's how I landed in Snorkel. So as a data scientist, the problem that I faced was a lack of labeled data because I was trying to identify fraud in the US stock market. And it's like, it doesn't occur that often, thankfully. This is good. These are good. This is a good problem, but the problem is how do you build a model on like 5 examples over the past, 10 years, right? And then how do you get the SME knowledge? How do you distill the SME knowledge? And it was such a struggle just talking with the SMEs. They explain it. They talk up a storm. They tell you exactly what they're looking for. They have such a clear picture of what that should look like. But how do you distill that into features in your data? Right, so you're trying to like featureize the data, which is that data development aspect, and this is where Snorkel turns the problem on its head. And so, like having been at other companies, one company solves the infrastructure problem, and like how do you host the data? Where do you run your compute? Like that's excellent. Databricks, our sponsor, I think is an excellent platform, and having worked there, like that, completely like as I used to be a customer, then I joined them, and I think that's fantastic. And then we kind of worked for a similar. We were competitors, where we had a machine learning algorithm that we had developed and we're offering customers. But there, we had to have the structured data and labeled data. And then we have the bridge of the machine learning algorithm. Great. Like once you give me a structured data set with labels, we're good to go. Yeah. That's easy, right? Yeah. Press a button here and like buy the product. And then Snorkel is actually solving the meat of the problem, which is we don't have labeled data. And we don't know what the features should be. We have unstructured data, and we have a notion of what the system is like. And I have luckily people to interview like what we're looking for and understand the use case, but it's not a direct link. And this is where we iterate with labeling functions and so on.
And just, echoing everything that's already been said, one other thing I'll mention is that one of the key hypotheses and why really Snorkel started was that if you focus more on the data than on model tuning and the model parameters, that will bring you to better production quality results than on the model tuning itself. And so much of, honestly, where we spend our time as a company is helping really push data best practices with our customers. We spend a lot of time looking at data and making sure that the data that we have is really aligned to the tasks that's available. I think Alex can being as one of the field applied machine learning engineers, see this constantly where a lot of the time we spend is a lot of the education required and having good data really analysis assessment before doing machine learning projects. As I think anyone that's worked as a data scientist knows, we're always keen to just jump in and start building a model, but taking that step back to really review data and really understand the data that you're working with will help get you to production quality results better than anything else.
So data obviously very important. I think one thing that gets lost in discussions about AI products when commonly is that they're very complicated. Like we talk about them in terms of one model, data going into one model, and then predictions coming out. But some of these systems can be 4, 5, 6 models. They can be layers of DevOps. In all the projects that you've worked on, what's been the most surprising blocker that you've run into? Leaving data aside, because we've covered that one pretty well.
I can take that one. Like one of the surprising blockers that I've seen, I mean, it's not that surprising, but it's definitely the fact that in order to have the model used, you need to build a lot of trust, right? And so getting to production also means getting business trust into the outputs of the model. And I'll give an example of a customer of Snorkel I've been working with and went to Geneva to see them a couple of weeks ago. They built multiple models to basically analyze invoices. Like the idea behind it is that from the invoices you kind of like derive what type of service are part of these invoices, and the output of this is to be able to predict ahead of time when a customer may need a service so that they can proactively sell them, right? So it's kind of like the idea of proactively reaching out to customers, and they use their invoice data to do this. So for that customer, they build multiple models for every type of invoices they have. They're a manufacturer, so they sell those large equipments like constructions and these kind of things. That customer spent a lot of time on model development, and reaching like basically 2 months or 1 month before they were supposed to go to production, they started to realize that actually the business needed a lot of trust into those models so that they can use this, right? They were moving from a rule-based system to machine learning. The machine learning outputs were much more accurate than the rule-based system. That's a fact. Now, the problem is that the outputs of the machine learning model is determining sales targets. So imagine like the user, like the sales team and the people who are selling services, they have their targets depending on the output of the model. So they need to understand what the model is doing. They need to understand why a model is giving a particular number, right? And that's part of trust. And so a lot of focus right now, actually, with customer before we go to production, is to actually make the outputs of the model explainable and make sure they gain the trust so that when there are questions coming from the sales team saying, hey, this target or this number doesn't seem right, can you explain why? And then the AI team is empowered to actually give them those explanations. And this, like, how do you remediate this, and how do you make sure that you don't do that at the very end of the project? Mm-hmm. It's by involving the business as early as possible as part of the decision making of your AI development. So making sure that you collect their feedback, you make them feel part of it, so that they actually can stand behind the results and the outcomes of the model when it's needed. And it's not only them requesting, okay, why does it behave like this? And it's them actually who feel part of it, and they can explain it themselves, right? So trust is really important. Yeah.
Love that.
That's a good one. Gabe?
Yeah, I think going off of, I guess it's a similar point, going off of trust, it's usually at times the task that we're working on generally is almost too complex for a data scientist. Yep. And generally we think of data scientists as very bright, capable, usually masters have strong background. However, a lot of the time they may lack the business background required that an SME can provide to really move the needle from a project into going into production. And I'm thinking of that same customer. I actually worked with them in the past, and one of the key bottlenecks as part of that was their data being extremely bespoke for the task at hand. It requires extensive amount of time with SMEs, more so than I think was originally expected, to really help them get to good, consistent model results, where a lot of the time was spent on getting initial model results, looking at some of those edge cases, and making sure that the data scientists working on the project had a similar knowledge about the data that the SMEs had. And personally, when across, I'd say, a majority of our customers, when we've Snorkel's platform is here to really help you bring SMEs and data scientists to collaborate together. We have an incredible annotation suite that is very powerful, and we can easily pull in data and the feedback that we get from SMEs into our model results. And sorry, when we've had SMEs partner with our data science teams, we've seen usually a data science project be able to hit production quality results 2 to 3 times faster than just the data science team really working on it. And so I would say really that key partnership with SMEs and making sure the data scientists have the knowledge regarding the task at hand really helps, or can be a blocker at times, but also really help push things into production faster.
So I'm going to stick on that for a moment. You said 2 to 3 times faster. Do you mean 2 to 3 times faster than Snorkel already accelerates us?
Yeah, great question. I would say similar with a little bit of both, because usually even, if it, at times with Snorkel, if you're able to have those SMEs as part of it, you get that feedback so much more quickly, and the platform's set up to quickly bring that feedback into your machine learning model development suite. And so it really helps that feedback loop both with Snorkel, and I'd argue even without Snorkel if you're building something that's more custom for it as well.
Yeah. Very often this feedback is into Excel spreadsheet, like when we come into a
Yes.
customer for the first time, like sending emails back and forth.
Yep.
Literally,
Yeah.
that's the current state in a lot of cases. So having like a platform where the data scientists actually can develop their data and their models and like collect the feedback, and having like a common platform where like the feedback directly that could integrate it in the model on the same day, right? Mm-hmm. And that's something that's quite powerful, and that's just like changes from Excel spreadsheet. And we see just that it could accelerate just the collection of feedback by a factor of 3 or 4 times. Yeah. Mm-hmm. Yeah.
I completely agree, of course, and we work on the same accounts together. But we're talking about SME engagement while involving them, and we talked about scoping and the use case ahead of time. So this is where they need to be involved, and so that we can get the use case to the scope that we want to deliver against. Because the biggest challenge that my team currently faces is actually the change in scope once you do introduce the information that of what you're doing to some stakeholders. Kind of midway, the scope will change, and then we'll never deliver the project, which prevents us from going to production on time, right? So it's of course like stakeholder engagement is something that we definitely want to get that buy-in right away. And as a data scientist, you are always selling the model that you're building to your stakeholders. Like we can't get away from that. And so it's kind of getting everybody's buy-in, everybody's on the same page, and my team and Gabe and your team, we work on that really, really closely with you to make sure that the scope of what we're doing is also, what we can sell to your stakeholders and then effectively put it in production. So that's my kind of take there of where we kind of start to creep away from what we agreed to build. Yeah.
Would you like to weigh in?
Yeah, I think, what's been discussed so far is captured pretty well. If I had to add a few things, it's just like, I'd say just right near the end of the project, I agree, like scope creep can definitely, threaten like timely delivery. I would say that like, setting like, pipelining each stage of the project, like at the appropriate, time is really important as well, right? So for example, like 3 weeks before deployment, might be a good time to consider like what is our maintainability strategy, or right, like is our test set really representative of what we expect to see in deployment? That's a big one, right? Like especially when you're like chucking data over the fence and being like, this is your training data, it is representative of what you'll see in deployment. Oftentimes, right, like there can be data drift, right, like or just the person who chucked you that data was like, actually there's an entire another database, right? So I'd say, it is. It's been very helpful to like work with, people who set out like a structured delivery plan with, pipelining of the steps. So like staggering these sorts of like earlier considerations to avoid those gaps. So
all the pieces surrounding the model building is easy. We all agree in comparison.
You've all worked on projects before you had access to Snorkel Flow and data-centric tools. Tell me about how big the difference has been and how you felt it. And Alex, let's start with you.
Yeah, for sure. I'd say like before, like one of the reasons I joined Snorkel really was like, in my previous job, we had like this anomaly detection problem, and like a huge like million like image data set, million video data set. But basically like we're really trying to find this needle in the haystack, and like it involves some like we had like the modeling side, which is like how do we create like using optical flow, or like basically just like how do we use UNet variants, capture this sort of like fancy algorithmic pattern in like the temporal data. And then on the data side, it's just like how do we even like label enough for anomaly detection if like in order to find like the positives, you have to comb through like 1,000 just random images, right? So this is where I feel like and like doing like the sort of error mode analysis, right? Like just traditional algorithm development, you have this model iteration, you get into a meeting with all your like data scientists, you're like, like what are the top false positives? Or, what are like the, common like, red spots in the confusion matrix, right? I was delighted to find, like when I joined Snorkel on the platform, that like we have these interactions built into the UX, like for those hands-on users, right? Like we have that analysis pane with the confusion matrix, and you just need to click the box that is like the brightest red in order to bring up, right, like that error mode with all the data points, and then you can really glimpse like that. When I first got started, that was like the entire like entry-level engineer job is like figure out what are like the top error buckets and then like do some data analysis on that, right? So like that sort of like click to filter like UX interaction really speeds things up like so much. And so I'd say that's like one of my favorite parts of the platform, honestly.
Yeah.
So that's definitely sped things up.
And just to complement this, I'd say for Snorkel, like this iterative cycle, like iterating between the errors, knowing what to do next to improve these errors and doing data development for this is a first-class citizen. So really putting at the center of the process, the iterative loop is really what's different with Snorkel approach and makes it so efficient. And in a way, like the number of customers or prospects I've been talking to recently, and they all build RAGs or they kind of like build these RAG systems, and they like the first question I ask is, where is your system failing? Are there particular questions that your system is not good at answering? Sometimes they don't even know, right? For the most immature customers, they don't put this evaluation as part of the process, and eventually they're just like creating a few demos because it looks cool to be able to have a chatbot that interacts with some documents, but at the end of the day, if you don't start with an initial LLM evaluation and understanding where your system fails, you will just like spend plenty of time working on things and you don't even know whether you'll be able to bring that to production. So yeah, creating this iterative cycle in a much more efficient way and starting from the errors is really what's different with Snorkel's approach, in my opinion. Yeah.
Well, definitely agree on that point. So my previous use case is one I described to you, which is I have very few labeled data points. How do I scale it to the rest of the data set? And that was just completely like a huge class imbalance, right? So one of the approaches we tried was also anomaly detection, and it was also the same problem. The anomaly detection, now think of anomaly detection, you can also think of a Gen AI algorithm. It's gonna put something out, it gives you something, it spits out something. And then how do you know it's useful to you? How do you know it's any good? So, and then in a later role, like we did build a chatbot that did use a RAG system that pulled used our documentation to give us an answer. And it was like a hugely scientific, like the genomics clinical research data set that we had to answer questions against. And this chatbot did answer questions, but how do you know it's right? And so how do you like evaluate it? And we were looking for solutions to evaluate this chatbot, and the solution we had was a spreadsheet, embarrassingly. And it was just like, we assign names to people, and it's like, well, you spot check these questions. and that's where Snorkel is now going with the Gen AI eval solution that we demoed earlier today. It is exactly that, like where should we look closer, just like the guided error analysis now with respect to Gen AI, because there's never a right answer until we give it a right answer, right? So it's still a labeling problem, but now it's even spitting out more data than you can handle. That's the hard part now.
Yeah, I mean, echo everything that everyone else has mentioned, but I remember, I think it was just over 2 years ago, while I was in my previous role, I saw a demo of Snorkel before I joined the company. I remember I was working as a data scientist, and I was just banging my head against the wall because so much of my time was looking through the data, trying to understand the different patterns and things in the data, doing extensive evaluation and analysis. And I remember when I saw the platform and saw specifically how you can easily take existing rules and codify these if you're trying to build a model on top of them, and really bridging that gap between understanding what's in your data and being able to really build something that can generalize to really the unique edge cases in your data. And I think just being able to have that simple workflow to quickly bring everyone together was really what were the big things that I think Snorkel can really help with.
We are running a little bit low on time. It's been a great conversation. Gotten great feedback on these questions. I want to try one that's a little bit short. If you could go back and redo an AI or an ML project that you worked on before, what project is it, and what would you do different?
So in my previous role, before joining Snorkel, I was working with a consulting firm. We were helping a bank try and predict when downgrades would happen with some of their bigger bonds that they were selling. And I will say this, we jumped in quick. We had, I'd say, a tighter timeline than what was originally expected. And we made a lot of assumptions about what was needed for the project, specifically the data that we were working with, how we were understanding the data, and also and what things we were making predictions on. And if I were able to go back, even if I had a shorter timeline for it, I would spend all of my time in that data and make sure that really everything I was working with was aligned to the business stakeholders there. The assumptions we were making were also assumptions we can make that would still benefit the end user that was going to be using this tool. And so, ironically, the results we ended up getting good results, but so much of our time was just spent all back in the data, where if we had spent more time at the beginning scoping, doing extensive analysis on that data for the task we had at hand, I think it would have removed a lot of pain we were running into.
One use case that comes to mind for me is a use case that we were actually trying to do a proof of value for. This is at a previous company for me as well, that we ultimately ended up losing the account. And the reason is there was a production pipeline, and they were looking for identifying like when the machinery fails. And there was a huge amount of unstructured data that was streaming from their various sensors in the production pipeline. It was a complicated use case that we didn't like fully understand, right? Because we were not subject matter experts in it. And we ultimately ended up losing the account because we didn't show them something useful, right? Because they needed a solution, and it needed to perform really, really well because it's a production pipeline. Like, it needs to perform well. That's like the main requirement. And so what we were dealing with was unstructured data that we didn't know how to featurize. And at the time, we couldn't work with unstructured data directly like we can with Snorkel Flow, because like we prefer to work with unstructured data because that's how we can go in and identify signal directly. And there we were trying to turn it into feature signals, which we didn't understand as subject matter experts. So we needed more SME in the loop, 100%. We needed to understand them better, and we needed to be able to deal with unstructured data better to understand the output that we were trying to build. So it was really understanding the system.
I actually reminds me a bit the one I'm going to mention, but I was working, so in my previous role, it was not Snorkel. When I thought through all the projects that which one I want to do it again, actually a lot of them came to mind in my previous role. I was leading the global professional services data science team, and one part of the team was focused on delivery. For that particular project, we're working with the US, so one of the US states, I can't mention which one. The use case is quite confidential, but basically, bottom line is that we were predicting one number every day. This number was then issued with a report and some explanations why the number was generated, as well as a confidence interval around it, and sent to a lot of stakeholders within this US state. So the governor was, for example, receiving this number. Yeah, and so a lot of stakeholders involved, and some decisions were made around planning for this particular state in the US from this number. And the model was amazing. Honestly, like the time and efforts that was put by the team to do this was like well spent, I would say, in building a great model, right? The thing is, the problem we had is, like, even with a great model, there are always times where the model may be wrong for various reasons, right? And the problem we had here is the fact that one day the model spits a number that was quite wrong, and then the explanations with it, the conversations in the interval, and then someone, a stakeholder, was really important within this real estate, like sent an email to reply all and say, this is wrong, why is it saying this? And then there were a lot of internal discussions that we were not aware of because we're in full delivery mode. We're the one delivering it. And those discussions happened, and a lot of people started to question the approach, question the model. And the mistake we made and how we could have fixed it is we should have involved like business stakeholders in the decision process. And that's kind of come back to my point about trust, right? Building trust is involving the business early on in the process of building the model, because in that case, someone would have stood up and say, okay, that's the reason why the model behaves this way, and could have like defended us. In that case, we actually eventually lost the account, and that was one of the reasons, yeah.
Alex, we're almost out of time. Can you do this in 10 seconds?
Super brief, yeah. I'd say don't be like afraid of pulling like the kill switch if there's something, lower hanging fruit, to take. So like I had a project recently even where we were delivering 2 models, one of which, ended up being very complex, right? And we spent a lot of time on it just to realize that the second part we could knock out in 1 week and deliver most of the business value there. So, if I had to look back, I would just pull the kill switch even faster on the complex one, just knowing that there are many like lower hanging fruit just to knock out and deliver business value.
All right, we are at time. thank you for being on the panel. Thank you for watching the panel. Enjoy the day.
Thanks, Matt.
Thanks for joining us.
Yeah.